Hello everyone, welcome back to Crafts by the Bow. Last night I uploaded my Facebook Live to YouTube and there isn't any sound again. So for the time being I'm going to stop uploading Facebook Lives and I'm going to remake the card. So this is the card set that we made on Facebook Live and I'm going to show you how I made it, and hopefully because I'm recording straight to YouTube the sound will be much better. So this is the little card that is in my Christmas Gnomes class, and the class is on October the 15th. I'm ordering this weekend, and this is one of the cards that comes pre-prepped ready for you. And I showed this one on the Facebook Live, and these are the two that we made that use that pattern or that layout. Now this piece is exactly the same as this one, but then we made it so that we stepped it up just a tiny bit by adding another layer behind, and this is the layout that I'm going to use today. So let me show you what we needed and what I used. Now our base, I've got Poppy Parade and it's cut at 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4 1/4. I have 2 pieces of Balmy Blue and they're cut at 4 7/8 by 3 1/4. I have 2 basic white, the thinner basic white layers, 2 of those cut at 4 3/4 by 3 1/8. And I have a piece of designer series paper that's cut at 3 inches by 4 1/2. So if you want to quickly take a picture of that so that you know what the sizings are, and then you don't have to go back to my blog or anything. So these are the sizes that I used. Okay, and let's start and assemble it. It's a really easy layout, and you've probably seen me use it before because I often make it, but instead of having one piece of designer series paper that I cut into 3, I use scraps, and I use 3 different patterns on here. I made a lot of my Christmas cards the year before last using this design, and it really is a useful one, but a really pretty one. Okay, so here's our Poppy Parade. I'm just going to fold that in half, and I haven't got my bone folder near me, so I'm going to use one of my stamping blocks and just go down that fold to burnish it. Yeah. Now the next thing we're going to do is cut our designer series paper. And because I wanted to have a continuous pattern, it's easier just to cut one piece at 3 inches and then cut it down to 1 1/2. So the only thing you have to remember is which way the pattern goes. And a couple of times I've caught myself out doing this and I've cut it at 3 inches at the top, and then of course the orientation is wrong. So you just have to breathe and cut it. Okay. So I'm going to use one of my white layers, and these 3 pieces I'm just going to add onto here. I'm going to use my liquid glue. It's a little bit bunged up. Let's hope that it's working. And I'm going to put my silicone mat underneath, just in case I get any glue on the edges, and rather than it go onto my desk, it's going to go onto the silicone mat. Oh, that's a lot of glue. Just going to try and move a little bit of that down. So I don't want it to sort of come through the sides. I'm going to put my first piece down, and it has a very narrow border. So what I do is try and get the top and the bottom border to look the same, and then line up that left-hand side border so it's, you know, the same size border all the way around. And I find if I do the top and the bottom first, it's easier. And then instead of putting the middle piece in, I always put the very far right hand side piece in, because it's easier to slot this piece in, and if the border is a tiny bit off you can't tell. Whereas if I put this middle piece in and then try and put this in, and you know I've gone too far here, it doesn't line up at all. So I do left, right, then middle. And if you're using like the liquid glue, you do have time to move the paper around a little bit. Okay, so again, I'm doing the same as I did at the other side. I'm lining top and bottom and trying to get an even border, and then I'm looking at the edge, like the outside edge. And then this one will fit just nicely in the middle. It would be fun to have two pieces and then a different one in the middle too. You can play with the paper, you know, just have it, whichever pieces work for you. Okay. There we go. And while I'm here, I'm going to put it on its Balmy Blue layer. There we go. And that way it will be dry, and I can start to do the other pieces while it is drying. Okay, so I'm going to pop that over to one side, and I'm going to do my inside layer. And again, we've got the second piece of the white that we cut, and the second piece of the Balmy Blue that we cut, and I'm just going to attach them together. I'm not going to stamp anything on here, but I am going to put a little embellishment on it. And for this, I'm going to use my stamping seal so that you know, you don't have to use liquid glue. If you have a tape runner, if you want to use tear and tape, anything that works for you. And some glues, some are harder for me to use, and I have arthritis in my thumb, so occasionally I will use my tape runner. I will use my liquid glue because this is the most economical. I'll use tear and tape, whatever works for me on that day. Okay, so here's our base card. I'm going to add that one to the inside and use the liquid glue again. And it will fit just right in the middle. The left and right border will not be the same as the top and bottom border, and that's fine. Just make sure you get your left and right border, your left and right border sorted first, and then position top and bottom. Okay. I've got a little bit of glue seeping out there. It will dry clear, but I might use my glue eraser later just to take off any sticky. Now I've got it on my finger. This piece, on my first card, I'd popped it on with dimensionals, but then I had quite a job trying to get this nice and flush, and I wanted to put the sentiment on with dimensionals to give it more height, but 2 sets of dimensionals I know won't go in my envelope to the UK. I'd have to pay extra shipping. So with my Facebook Live cards, I glued them straight down, and that's what I'm going to do on, that's what I'm going to do on this one, but I need to put my twine round. Good save. Okay, I've got my basic white twine. You can use the twine, you can use a thinner ribbon, like a narrower ribbon, like the seam binding, and you can tie a bow, or you can tie just a knot. Excuse my reach when I get my scissors. I like the twine because it sort of picks up the white in the card, and it's not too obtrusive. No, let's move that. It's just narrow and it's easy to tie. If you were using ribbon and wanted to use sort of a little less, another thing to do is maybe to tie your bow first. Just tie it like this. Those loops a little bit smaller, they're a wee bit big. Okay, so you tie your bow, and this way you don't need as much ribbon because you can do this with a much smaller piece, and then just cut this piece here. Let me see, I'm going to pop this over at the right, so I'm going to just cut my ribbon there, my twine there, okay, and then let's turn that around. And then you only have to use a small piece. See, because you've only got a little bit to tuck under and a little bit to tuck under. You don't have to have the biggest piece of ribbon. It doesn't have to go all the way across the back. Let's put some tearing tape down and hold that. It wasn't the best bow that I've ever tied in my life, but I'm sure it will be fine. Take these backings off. Oopsie. Let's see if we can get that to go down a little bit like this. And I'm going to put my bow at the right hand side. So I need it to go that way. I want it to be about here. And then I'm just going to put that cut end on. Put it over my, over my tearing tape. And then let's get that silicone mat back so I don't stick it onto here. Put that down there. I'm going to go all the way across and make sure it's level. And I'm going to pull it just a little bit taut and then stick it onto my tearing tape. And you wouldn't have this long piece at the back. It was because I measured it for the whole of the card, but then showed you a different way. Okay. Right, now we can add that to our card. I'm going to check that our card opens the right way. If you know that you're doing this as a handmade and hand-given card, rather than a handmade and mailed card, you could put another layer of dimensionals on this side. Just like on the inside, I'm lining up the left and the right, and then the top and the bottom. There we go. Okay. Now, to make the little, let me get this back. Oh, to make the little gnome that we used, it's the dies that come with the stamp set. These dies. And when you look at them, there are some that cut out the stamps, there are some that cut out designer series paper like this, and there are some that do a punch art. And I'm using the punch art ones, so let me just move that. So I got this piece here, and you see this makes the beard, and when it cuts out, you get this imprint as well, and I really love this feature. This shows you where to put your next pieces. So I have the beard in basic white, and then let's pop that back on there, and then this little piece here, you've got two of them, and this is the nose. So I've cut this in, oh, what did I cut it in? I'll have a think. It's the peachy colour. It's a pink, but I just can't think of its name. But that's what I cut that out on. But I think you could also use that to make, let's get the two that I did, to make like two little hands. Because little gnome doesn't have any, so you could do it in a different colour look, put them underneath and make them as two little hands. But I think really it's just for a nose. So let's pop that back. And this little piece are the feet. And when you've cut and embossed those, you see you've got this little cross on there. That makes like his little shoelaces. And then last of all is his hat. And his hat is, oops, this piece. And I've cut this out in Poppy Parade. And you see it's got this hole in there. When I first got it, I thought it was so that I could push this piece out easier. But when I was playing, I realised that there's this teeny weeny little triangle, and that fits inside this here, so that if you run that whole thing through the cut and emboss machine, you'd get a little hole just at the top. And that means you could make it into a gift tag. You could make it as a little hanging ornament that you could put on a gift or even on a Christmas tree. So that just makes that tiny weeny hole. And these others, a couple cut out the stamps, a couple cut out the designer series paper. Just have a little play and see, you know, what you can make. Okay, so here's our little gnomey, and I'm going to pop him together. And remember I said you have this little indentation here. I'm going to start with the nose. And that card is petal pink. That's what it is. It's petal pink. It's like a peachy pink colour. Okay, and I'm just going to hold that down. And then at the side, you have this little curl at each side. That's where you stick the hat. So it makes it a little bit easier, because if you're just putting the hat on, you don't know where to glue up to. I'm going to put a little bit over the top of his nose as well. And the first time I made it, I had glue a little bit too far up and then everywhere was sticky. But once I realised that that was your guideline, it made it much easier. Oops, pop that on there. I'm just going to hold it. You see, it doesn't cover up much of the hat. So it just makes it that much easier rather than guessing. Okay, and then the last little piece are his feet. And I just put a tiny bit over here. And then it goes straight on under his beard. But you don't have to make him standing up. You could make him so he was dancing. No, have it sort of at a little angle like this. And it looks like they're dancing, which is pretty cute too. I just covered this up with his beard. There are no little marks to show where to put the feet. Only the nose and the hat. Okay, now I'm going to leave him there. Oh, he's a bit wobbly, look. Looks like he's gone a bit dizzy. Just line him up there. I just want to make sure his body's straight. Doesn't look like he's just climbed out of bed. There we go. Okay. Now this one I am going to put on with dimensionals. And what I found is if I put the dimensionals over where the two pieces are joined, it just gives it an extra little bit of strength there. So if the glue did happen to come undone, at least the dimensionals would hold it on for you. Okay, now let's take these backings off. And I know I haven't put my sentiment on yet. I'm going to put that on in a moment. And I want to have him sort of just hanging over the edge of that layer there. Okay. You see how that's so much better when he's got dimensionals on him. I like that. Okay. Now, to make my sentiment, I was using these stylish shape dies. And I used these two. So for the one card with the little deer on that I cut out of the designer series paper, I used this larger piece and then just trimmed it down. And for my others, I used this narrow one. And I always keep like a negative space piece for all of my dies like this. And that means what I can do is I can look at any stamp set, take my negative piece and think, oh yeah, I could use that sentiment on there. No, I can't use that one, or no, yeah, this one would work. Because I've stamped a lot of times thinking, oh, that die will fit. And then when I've tried the die, it didn't fit. So I find it easier to use just this little negative piece. And I keep those in with my dies. So I have already cut my die out and done my stamping, just because I had a piece left from Facebook Live. So this is the one that I did, and I stamped in basic grey. I didn't want to make it a Christmas card, and there wasn't a birthday sentiment on there. It would make a great birthday card, but I'm just going to use this one. So more like a thank you card. And I'm going to put dimensionals on the back, and then I'm going to stick it over the twine. So if you have ribbon there, you could stick that right over. And it just helps to adhere that twine down, so it's not going to move either. On a couple of the cards, I just slotted the sentiment underneath the image that I'd stamped or cut out. But for this one, I don't think I need to. I'm going to put it right in the middle, but I had just popped it in there like that on others. But I'm just going to move the card so I can see that this is nearly straight. There we go. Oh, there we go. Okay, and I'm not putting any embellishments on here. On the one with the little deer, I did put 3 of the little gems from the Fine Sparkle adhesive backed gems, which go with the Gnomes suite. I am going to pop something on the inside though. I have some of the Toadstool Mushrooms from the Designer Series paper. There's a whole sheet with them on, and I used the die to cut them out, but if you don't have the dies, they're really easy to fussy cut. This is where the little deer came from, this piece that has the trees on the back. And the little gnomes, there's a whole sheet, 2 whole sheets with lots of gnomes on. And I'm going to pop a little house on here, and I could even put a little gnome in front. So, or I might just put a little gnome. Let's just see. Let's move that piece. No, I think I'm going to go with a little toadstool. And it still gives you lots of room to write. I was thinking then about having it overhanging a little bit, but I don't want to hang over too much, just because this layer, it's got 2 extra layers of card. So let's pop him down here. So it looks like he's at his little house. Yeah. Oopsie. There we are. So they were my Facebook Live cards, and I'm sorry, I don't know what happens to the sound once it goes to YouTube. So for the time being, until YouTube and I can get it sorted out, I'm going to just remake my cards. So here are the other cards that I made. So here's today's, and these are the ones that we had for the Facebook Live. Thanks so much for joining me, everybody, and I do apologise again about the sound on YouTube. Hopefully we can get it sorted soon. Take care, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you all again really soon. Bye-bye.